Good morning, Opening Pathways viewers. This is Tom LeNoble. It is great to be with you today. I think sometimes, I don't know about you, but in my life, I know that there's more than just my planning involved in something. And my guest today, Kiki Monifa, and I met at my book launch party of all things. And we knew when we met that we needed to talk more. We knew there was more for us to share, which led one thing to the other, including delays until this podcast today. And I think sometimes in life, delays are meant to happen because here I am with Kiki, who is the CEO and president of BlackHistoryEveryday.com as we start Black History Month, which I honor. And I am thrilled that whatever was involved that allowed this to happen made this happen. Kiki, welcome to Opening Pathways.
Thank you, Tom. And just like a little thing, you're right. When we met, we know that we were destined and there was more. But I knew that even before I met you, because as you mentioned, we met at your book launch party. Before the book launch party started, before you came on the stage, about five people approached me and they said, "How do you know Tom LeNoble?" And I'm like, "I don't. I'm just here because I heard he wrote this fabulous book." And every single one of them said, "You will know him. You will be friends with him."
Ah, how beautiful is that? Thank you. And they were correct.
Yes.
So I want to start at somewhat of a beginning. We're going to even go further back from the beginning, but we're going to start with this one. And I want to know what was that sparked your first idea to start BlackHistoryEveryday.com.
That's a great question. And it came out of frustration actually with the month that we're in, with Black History um, Month, that I felt like growing up and even as an adult, every Black History Month, I kept hearing the same facts over and over again, regurgitated, focused on the United States, focused on civil rights, focused on men, focused on straight people. And I thought, this can't be all there is to Black history. There's a whole continent, Africa, and then there are people from the African diaspora, and there has to be more. Aren't there women who are making history? Aren't there gay men who are making history? Aren't there lesbians and bisexuals and transgender people? And I myself was ignorant of this and decided, one, there was also the ongoing joke that Black History Month was the shortest month of the year, and we got short shrifted because in some months 28 days, the most 29 during leap year. And then everybody that I talk to about Black history, they're like, Black history should be every day. So I'm like, you're right. So that's why I decided to launch BlackHistoryEveryday.com. And I was actually shocked that the domain was available because I thought certainly somebody else has grabbed this as a concept. There's Black History 24/7, there's all this other stuff, but I 8 years ago, almost 9 years ago in April, grabbed the domain blackhistoryeveryday.com and was vowed to, have diverse Black history facts to make sure that queer folks were honored and that women were honored and people from other than the United States were honored, things that you wouldn't think about, Black and Japanese, just all throughout the world. So that's
Yeah,
that's why I did it.
I believe that domain was waiting for you, Kiki. Um, you know, so I want to speak a little bit more but and go behind that a little bit because viewers, Kiki's also a number one best-selling author, and there's far more to this person, Kiki, than just blackeveryday.com. Kiki, tell us a little bit about your past, the viewers.
Yes, I do have a past, and almost all of it is public. But I actually started out after I went to undergraduate, I went to law school. And that's actually what brought me out to the West Coast. I went to the University of Santa Clara Law School, and I worked for years working at legal services of Alameda County, and doing those sorts of things. And then I then taught, and I was a law professor. Uh, Mainly at the now defunct New College School of Law in San Francisco. So I did that, and I was good at that, but I wasn't passionate about that at all. And then I fortunately had the luxury of, when I turned 40, my then partner and wife said, "What do you want for your birthday?" And I said, I just want to go away someplace by myself and think about what I want to do when I grow up. I was turning 40 at this point. So I did go away. Actually went to Half Moon Bay for the weekend, and I took journals that I had written when I was 19 years old, and I had not looked at them in the ensuing 21 years. And I don't know what made me think to take these journals, but I did. And I read the journals, and the only thing that I talked about doing was writing. And I'm like, how could I have forgotten this? This is what I wanted to be. I wanted to be, and I said explicitly in these journals that I wanted to be a cross between Nikki Giovanni and Lillian Hellman, because these were the most visible and famous writers that I was aware of at the time when I was 19 years old. And I just thought that they were incredibly talented, and they both did things that I didn't do, but I thought writers should do. They smoked cigarettes and they drank brown liquor, and they were these tough broads. And I'm like, yeah. So I came back from the weekend, and I told Ruthie, my then partner and wife, I said, I want to be a writer. And somehow in the ensuing conversations, Ruthie said, we had no children then, that I could quit my job and I could pursue writing for 1 year. And the 1 year turned into 2 years. And during that time, and of course, I also had no idea how to be a writer. And as I recall, I went to the library and I checked out books about writing, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew what I didn't want to do. I knew that I was not interested in writing fiction, so I wasn't interested in this, despite my love of Lillian Hellman. And I thought, I'm not really interested in writing poetry, but I don't know what I want to do. So I read all these books about what do you do when you want to be a writer, and one of the things that they said was, um, start reviewing things for publications. So and I had no writing experience. I went to the person who was the then publisher of the San Francisco Bay Times, Kim Corsaro. She's passed now, and I said, I want to write book reviews for you. And she said, come on in, come to the office. We got a bunch of books. So I started writing book reviews and music reviews for the San Francisco Bay Times. And it was great. Got my name in print. And then from there, somehow I stumbled upon an organization called Media Alliance that doesn't exist, at least in brick and mortar form anymore, but it was also in San Francisco. And it was a training ground. And I actually worked there. And then I was enrolled in a program called BAMROC, which is an acronym for Bay Area Mentorship for Reporters of Color. And
Wow.
as I recall, this was an intensive 1 week program, 8 hours a day, where they brought in different people to teach you about all sorts of elements in journalism. So we had, and there were these were like little hour-and-a-half blocks. We had someone from the San Francisco Chronicle come in and teach us about photojournalism. We had Tim Redman from the not there was another free newspaper, and I can't think of the name of it in for years in San Francisco. It wasn't a queer newspaper, but it was a weekly newspaper. But he was the executive editor of that publication. I think it's still well, the weeklies don't exist like they did, those free weeklies, East Bay Express and whatever the one that I can't recall right now in San Francisco was. He came in and talked about what it is like to write for a weekly free magazine. We had someone from Mother Jones come in to talk about writing for a monthly publication. So all the kind of Bay Area people who were in print then came in to talk. And it was very interesting. And I thought about all this stuff. And when people talked, I'm like, oh, I don't really want to work for a newspaper. I don't want to work for a magazine. Um, maybe I want to do freelance writing, but I still didn't know what sort of freelance writing I wanted to do until Brenda Payton, who was an opinion editorial columnist for the Oakland Tribune when the Oakland Tribune was a real newspaper then, came in and she talked about opinion editorial writing. And a light bulb went off. And at that moment, I thought, that's exactly what I want to do. So I decided, okay, I'm going to start writing opinion editorials. So I first approached this organization that it still exists. It's the Progressive. It's a spinoff of the Progressive magazine. That it's a monthly magazine. It's national, but based out of Madison, Wisconsin. Because I saw a little ad saying that they wanted progressive people to write opinion editorials. So I'm like, great, I want to do that. So I contacted them and said, I want to write an opinion editorial. So they said, great, send us 3 clips of opinion editorials that you've written. And I'm like, oh, there's a little snag there because I've got lots of publications, but no opinion editorials. So then I went to Tim Redman with the San Francisco Free Weekly and met with him since he was one of my teachers in the Bamrock program and said, I want to write an op-ed. And he invited me to come into his office. I went to his office. I had like 20 ideas of things I wanted to write about. He had some ideas. I left his office and we decided then that I would write about, at the time, there was a proposition to build the new football stadium in San Francisco. And this was, things that happen very frequently. And they were dangling and saying, hey, this is going to be good for the city. This is going to bring in jobs, etc. So I wrote an opinion editorial, calling it out and saying that, as
I
opposed
loved
to
it.
this proposition. And I had one of the best lines ever is that I said, and I think the title of, not I think, I know the title of the article that I didn't come up with, that Tim Redman or the editors came up with, was bamboozled, bewitched and bamboozled by the J word. And the J word was jobs. But my takeaway line was, in terms of this proposition, that I would tell Willie Brown, who was the then mayor of San Francisco, and Edward DiBartolo, who was the owner of the San Francisco 49ers, to take their balls and get out of San
I,
Francisco.
This
So
is
that
great, Kiki. This is great. I've got
that
some other questions I want to delve into. So,
yes.
first of all, viewers, what you just heard was how Kiki used what I like to call the energy of support, how you reach your goals and dreams by finding others to support you as you go along. More on that later. Kiki, I want to know something. I'm going to ask you a couple questions, then I want to talk a little bit about the change of the year that we just had. But since you started BlackHistoryEveryday.com, what belief about yourself has changed? How are you fundamentally different since you started that?
I think that I'm fundamentally different because I now know that I can do anything that I want to do. Um, when I first started out, I was quite, you know, unsure of what I could do and how I could do it, particularly around technology, because I thought I don't know how to do a website. And then I decided I wanted to do an Alexa skill. I don't know how to do this, and I'm incapable of doing it. But through exactly what you said, the support of others, engaging them, I figured out how to do a website, not only my own with the help, and I figured out also how to make Black History Every Day be an Alexa skill. So uh, again, I don't walk alone. Is the basic thing that
Right.
I've learned.
Amazing.
I have other people.
So tell me this. We just went through the new year. Here we are already in February somehow. When we passed into this new year, did life ask you to slow down and change anything? And what did you actually hear?
Life asked me to be more reflective and contemplative about what it is that I'm doing and more selective about who I am around. To Not only to avoid the toxic relationships that I had in my life, but more importantly, to embrace people that would bring good energy to me, including myself. So that was
I
my
love
real key takeaway for 2026.
that. What personal values have guided you from the start?
I don't think necessarily from the start, but as I became, um, I'll just say, as I began to love myself, I then began to imbue values. And I don't think that this real love of myself started until, in earnest, really, until maybe 6 years ago, where, and then really focusing maybe a year and a half ago, where I decided, and this was just a foreign concept to me, that the person that I should love the most and that I should care about the most is me. And that was a huge shift, to not focus on my children, or now to focus on my grandchildren, or my partner, to really focus on me. And the question really was, all the time, whenever I do stuff, the question is for me now, that is imbued in my values, is, um, does this benefit me? And I don't mean this in a selfish way, but is this something that is going to bring me joy? Is this something that is going to possibly drag me down? And also learning the power of saying no
Yes,
as
yes.
a complete sentence.
Yes, yes. I love this because I think, for me anyway, and I think many others, and you just spoke to this journey we're on in life. I don't know about you, but I grow up where it was really you put everybody else first. You put so many things first, and I know I have learned, and like you, it wasn't from the beginning. I learned it later in life of that really to be able to do that and do that not only effectively but authentically required to put me first. And you are correct, not in a selfish way at all. Tell us about a recent risky decision you had to make and what gave you the courage to act on it.
Well, I think I I think I take risky decisions all the time. I think that this comes from um, loving myself and also not caring what other people think. So I think the most recent one that I did was, although I think it's daily, the one that sticks out is I decided I wanted to go see Rosie O'Donnell in concert. She was doing a play, a one-woman show, a solo show called Common Knowledge. And I just saw this, about the show on, on the internet, and I decided I'm going to do that. Well, I think that I thought when I was going to do it that she would be touring in the United States and coming to the Bay Area so I could see it then. But then when I looked it up, she was only performing two shows. They were both in Australia. And I've never been to Australia before. And I decided at that moment, I'm going to go to one of these shows. Um, and I at first shared it with someone who said, that's nuts. You're going to go all the way to Australia to see Rosie O'Donnell in the show? And they're like, why? And I'm like, because that's the only place she's performing and I want to see the show. So I bought a ticket, and actually the show was at the Sydney Opera House. So I bought it. I first bought a ticket to the show to make sure that I had a ticket to the show. I'm like, I don't want this to be sold out. And then I found a place to stay in Sydney, Australia, beautiful place. And then I bought a plane ticket. And um, I think that that was a risk in some ways, but it just made perfect sense to do it, for myself.
I
And
love
then
it.
yeah, and then I would just also add that it became really the way that I live my life now. It's something that my father told me that he wanted for me and for my children, and that is to be able to do what you want when you want to do it, and to not have to say, I can't do this because I can't afford it. And I think that that's before I learned that lesson, that's how I lived my life. And without even knowing how much something would cost in terms of dollars or anything, you make these decisions in your head, oh no, I can't do it. But the decision really is, I'm not worth it. So I think that for me, once I decided that I loved myself the most, I could do anything, including flying to Sydney, Australia to see
I
Rosie
love this
O'Donnell
story. I
at
love this
concert.
story. In my life, I have realized that some of my, we'll just call them biggest mistakes, turned out to me one of my biggest successes. Have you ever had a mistake that taught you more than any success or turned out to be a success?
Yes, and I think recently I applied for this program at the Pointer Institute, and I just it's one of those things where I applied and I knew I was going to get in, and was really shocked when I got the letter, and actually one of the nicer rejection letters saying no. And I had a second, you're not accepted in the program. What the letter said is, not at this time. And it said that the program was offered every year, and some people have to apply more than once. So for about maybe 5 minutes, I had a little pity party for myself and took this as, uh, personally, oh, well, how could they turn me down? This is a failure on my part because I didn't get into this program. And then got over it, and um, because I didn't get into the program, other opportunities opened up. Had I been in this program, I wouldn't have had those other opportunities. And the biggest other opportunity that opened up is that somehow I decided that I wanted to do a solo performance in Edinburgh at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. If I was in this other program, that wouldn't have happened. I wouldn't have had the capacity to do it. So I think that that was my so-called
Amazing.
failure turned into a big success.
Amazing. How do you recognize when fear is simply information versus a stop sign?
I think it's always information, and that's something that I have worked on actively in my practices. In fact, I actually just started a new thing about dealing with fear. Um, so I think it's always information. I think that it is, and unless one is going to be in physical danger, like there's a fire or a bear coming after you, anything, fear is always just really information. And that's something that I think, again, within the last less than a year that I have learned, because when I was examining things, I was fearful about so many things that, then when I confronted them, turned out to be nothing. It's like
Yes.
not opening mail for, fear of what's going to happen. Like that thing couldn't happen if I did open the mail. But and what I found to confront that really is, as you talked about, is information. It's like usually the fear was because I didn't have all the information, or I made up stuff in my head that wasn't factual. So it's like at least get the facts.
Yes, yes. I think, this other than the bear chasing you, which you need to be fearful and use your brain to figure out how you're
Yes,
going to deal with that. I've learned that fear is typically an opportunity for growth. It's something that is asking me to be aware, open my eyes, and think of it as something other than my initial reaction to it. Along with other things that I think also are opportunities for growth. Fear is one of them that comes to us.
absolutely.
Tell me this. I would like to know, and the viewers would too, what are you most proud of? Not publicly, not professionally, but personally.
Well, I'm actually most proud. I think like of a lot of people, of my children and my grandchildren, um, and particularly since I was someone who never thought I would be a mother, and part of it was that uh, I didn't think that I had the capability of rearing, really bringing up a child the way that they deserved to be brought up. So um, for years, I never thought about having children, and I was never in a relationship that wanted children. And then I got into a relationship, and Ruthie, the person I was in the relationship with, as we started dating, said, I want to have children. Are you interested in having children? I'm like, no. But through my individual therapy and we did couples counseling, realized that my not wanting to have children was a fear-based thing, that I couldn't be a good mother. So I dealt with those fears, and also realized I didn't have to be perfect. That and it also had to do with forgiveness of my parents, and I realized that they did the best job that they could with the skill set that I had,
Yes.
and I could do the same thing.
And I'm going to bet that fear became an opportunity for growth.
It was a huge opportunity for
Yes,
growth for
yes.
me.
So tell me this, what boundary has become essential to your sustainability?
I think again, it's the self-protection thing and the self-love, that now everything gets filtered through that I'm very firm about those boundaries. And not doing things. There's all these things that we sometimes we just make up stuff ourselves that we should be doing something like this, or this is the proper thing to do, or this is how a mother should act, this is how a human being should act, etc. And I just obliterate all of those things and still put everything through the lens of what's best for me, what works for me. And then that helps, keep boundaries, and also not truly not caring what other people think or have to say in their limited things. So
Yes, yes.
yeah,
Such a great, great lesson, I think, in life is that, yeah, what other people think is more about them than it is about
exactly.
than what they're thinking, right? So tell me this, what's the boldest vision? What comes next for Kiki and BlackHistoryEveryday.com?
Well, short term, I think that I um, am really thinking about what other innovations that I can make, and what other themes, and also not being limited. So we have the Oscars coming up next month, March 15th. So, and we have just rife with Black history facts, starting with the fact that Sinners by Ryan Coogler, who's a Bay Area native, is the most nominated film in the history of the Oscars with 16 nominations.
Wow.
So that got me to thinking, what other Black history facts can I come up with around the Oscars? And I had a lot of them, but they're still more and more and more creatively. So that's what I really think about, that the overall vision, that there's always something new theme based that I can do with Black History Everyday .com. And I went to Morocco recently, and I came up with the idea that for every country in Morocco, I mean, in Africa, sorry, I want as many Black history facts as possible. And particularly the intersection of LGBTQ facts and countries in the African diaspora, and obviously that includes the United States, because there is also this notion that, particularly, this is more of I think, a United States kind of civil rights thing, that somehow folks in the United States are less inclusive, and I'm talking about Black folks, more homophobic than anyone else. So it has been good to be able to lift up these amazing and have this vision of uh, people like me. It's like I am a lesbian. Well, I call myself a blesbian, and I say that I coined that word, Black lesbian, blesbian, and I want to see myself in Black history every day, and I want to see people that I don't see. I want to know, what transgender activists are doing. I want to know about what transgender activists on the African continent are doing. So that's my vision. I used to always say that I want Black history every day to be, for everyone, including myself, like watching 60 Minutes was. I watched 60 Minutes when I was growing up, and I just remember every time I'd watch it with my family. We'd finish a segment, and it's like, wow, I didn't know that. I wasn't aware of that. And that's what my vision is, and that has come to reality for Black History Every Day, that people will read a fact and it's like, I I had no idea about that. That's really phenomenal, and get excited about, this little fact, and want to read more and discover more.
I love that. I love that. What does renewal look like for Kiki beyond rest and time off, the usual? What does renewal look like?
That's a good question, and that's something that, I mean, you're right. Rest is definitely part of it, but I think it is really looking at things with fresh eyes and not doing things in a rote way all the time. So it's a paying certainly paying attention to the past, but a constant renewing of, is there a better way of doing this? Is there a, and I say better way for me of doing this, and really listening to that inner voice that says, yes, you do need to rest. You do need to slow down, and looking at things, in a more global perspective than just on a day-to-day basis, but also honoring those day-to-day opportunities that one has for renewal as well.
Yes, yes, yes. What does legacy mean to you at this stage of life?
Yeah, that's something that I think about a lot. And I think about it. I think about, first of all, my ancestors and the legacies that they have left. And, I think about that for me in terms of my children and my grandchild at this point. And this is why I think that, honestly, blackhistoryeveryday.com is my legacy. And that is something that can be continued after I'm gone, but it's already established, and at this point it's in its ninth year. And at first I kind of thought it's limited, but clearly it's not limited. Um, one, there's no way of covering all of the Black history facts, and there are more being created every day. And to have that as to leave that, to have that happening now currently, and to leave that as a legacy for the world.
Yes,
I think that's my
yes. I've been thinking a lot
calling.
about this word lately too. Tell me this one last question for today. If your younger self, a much younger Kiki, were watching this podcast, what would you tell her?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would tell her, what I tell myself now is to live every moment in your life with thinking about what brings you joy and how you can have joy. I would also tell her that the two other key elements, other than having joy in your life, are having gratitude and expressing that gratitude both verbally in your mind and by writing it down. And the other really key concept, the way that I live my life, is forgiveness.
Yes,
And not forgiveness in the traditional way in which I grew up, where, you apologize to someone and say, "Oh, I forgive you." Um, the primary forgiveness has to do with forgiving yourself and giving yourself grace, but also forgiving others. Even though when you think that you were wronged, because that those three combinations of making sure there's joy in your life, joy and laughter, having forgiveness, and having an attitude of gratitude, as people say, I think are the real key lessons. So that's what I would have told my younger self, because I feel like I didn't really begin to embrace those three elements until I was in my 60s.
amazing. Kiki Monifa, CEO of BlackHistoryEveryday.com. Thank you for being on Opening Pathways today.
Thank you, Tom. It was great.
Thank you. And to my viewers, please know one thing I have learned in this life is we will always, always have more in common. There is more about us that is the same than will ever be different. In this Black History Month, take a moment to learn something you didn't know before. Take time to understand something that you may have heard today that opens your mind and said, I might want to learn more about this. Kiki, thanks again for being here. And to my viewers, this is Tom LeNoble, and I'll see you next time.